The aroma of cornbread and slow-cooked collard greens lingered in the air of Harper's kitchen, mingling with the faint hum of jazz spilling from the old jukebox tucked in the corner. Simone Harper moved with practiced ease between the tables, balancing trays, greeting familiar faces, and flashing that smile she had perfected over the years, a smile that disguised how much of her heart was still broken. The restaurant wasn't just a business. It was her sanctuary, the one place she had built with her own hands after a lifetime of scraping by. But no matter how many coats of paint she brushed over its walls or how many customers she fed with warmth and kindness, one ache never dulled. 8 years ago, at just 24, she had walked into a hospital nursery, kissed the forehead of a baby she had named Amaya, and handed her over to a couple who promised the world. She'd told herself it was for the best, that the baby deserved stability, opportunity, 2 loving parents. But every night since, she had lain awake, her arms empty, wondering if her daughter was safe, if she was loved, if she remembered the sound of her heartbeat. She had become good at hiding it, burying that pain under long work hours and polite laughter, until the day he walked in. It was a Wednesday afternoon. The lunch rush had just thinned, and Simone was wiping down the counter when the door swung open. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a navy suit entered, followed by a girl skipping at his side. Simone glanced up casually, offering her usual welcome, but the words froze in her throat. She had hair like midnight silk, pulled into a messy ponytail, a smile that seemed to light up the dim room, and eyes. Those almond-shaped eyes Simone had seen once in a mirror as she cradled a newborn. Simone's knees went weak. She gripped the rag in her hand until her knuckles whitened. Her breath caught in her chest. And then, as if fate wanted to make sure Simone didn't mistake what she saw, the girl reached for a menu and her sleeve slid up, revealing a tiny crescent-shaped birthmark on her shoulder. Simone staggered back, her world spinning. That mark, that little curve of skin, had been the last thing she'd kissed before signing the papers. The man, Lucas, she would soon learn, guided the girl to a booth near the window. He was handsome in a clean, unassuming way, sandy brown hair, sharp jawline softened by the tenderness in his eyes when he looked at the girl. He smiled at her as she settled into her seat. The sight pierced Simone's heart with something sharp and unfamiliar. Hope and jealousy tangled together. Simone forced her body to move forward, her voice steady even though her insides trembled. "Welcome to Harper's Kitchen," she said, setting down menus. "What can I get for you two today?" The girl looked up, her smile so wide it nearly undid Simone. "Do you have peach cobbler?" Simone's throat tightened. "We do," she whispered. "She's been talking about peach cobbler all day," Lucas said with a chuckle, his voice deep and warm. He glanced up at Simone, and for a moment their eyes locked. There was something disarming about his gaze, something that made her chest tighten further. "Then cobbler it is," Simone said quickly, scribbling down the order, fighting to keep her hands from shaking. As she turned away, fragments of conversation drifted behind her. The girl, Amaya, she heard Lucas call her, was telling him about school, about her favorite subject, about the painting she'd made that morning. The sound of her voice made Simone's heart swell and ache all at once. She had imagined this voice for years, wondered if it was high-pitched, soft, musical. Now here it was, clear and beautiful. And she was supposed to stand there like a stranger. When the plates arrived, Simone lingered just a second too long, watching Amaya dig into the cobbler with joy. She finally forced herself to retreat behind the counter, clutching the edge as silent tears threatened to fall. The afternoon crowd was gone, and soon only Lucas and Amaya remained. As Amaya ran to the jukebox, curiosity sparkling in her eyes, Lucas leaned against the booth, watching her with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. Simone approached with the check, her heart thundering. "She's a sweet girl," Simone said softly, testing the waters. Lucas smiled faintly. "She's my world." Simone's chest squeezed. "She's your daughter?" she asked, keeping her tone casual, though her lungs burned for the answer. He hesitated, then sighed. "Not exactly. She's my niece. My sister and her husband adopted her when she was a baby. They passed away in a tragic car accident last year. Since then, I've had custody." He cleared his throat, eyes clouded. "I wasn't planning on being a father, but life had other ideas." Simone's hand tightened around the tray she held. So that was it. That was how fate had returned Amaya to her orbit. Not through some miracle reunion, but through tragedy. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. "You're doing a good job," she said softly. "She seems happy." Lucas gave a small, almost shy smile. "I'm trying. Most days I'm just praying I don't mess it all up." Simone wanted to reach across the table, to squeeze his hand and tell him he was already giving Amaya what mattered most, love, presence, devotion, but she couldn't. She was still a stranger to him. When they finally left, Amaya waved enthusiastically. "Bye, Miss Harper," she chirped, and Simone's heart nearly cracked open at the sound. "Goodbye, sweetheart," Simone managed, her voice thick. The door closed, the bell jingled, and the restaurant was quiet again. But Simone's world had been shattered. That night she sat on the edge of her bed, clutching the old photograph she had of herself at 24, holding a tiny baby wrapped in a hospital blanket. The birthmark was visible even then, a small crescent against soft skin. She pressed her lips to the photo, tears streaming unchecked. Her daughter, her baby girl, alive, smiling, sitting in her restaurant. But she wasn't hers anymore. The questions tore at her like claws. Should she tell Lucas? Should she confess the truth? Or should she stay silent, watching from the shadows, letting Amaya live in peace without confusion? Her hands shook as she held the photo tighter. She had thought she had accepted her choice, thought she had buried that pain, but seeing Amaya again had ripped the wound wide open. And now there was Lucas, a man who seemed steady, kind, who clearly adored the little girl. Could she risk destroying what he had built for her daughter? Simone turned off the lamp and lay in the darkness, tears dampening her pillow. For the first time in years she prayed aloud, her voice breaking. "God, what do I do?" The silence answered back, heavy and unyielding. And in that silence, Simone realized her life was about to change in ways she wasn't ready for, because secrets like this had a way of coming to light. The next few days passed in a blur for Simone, though nothing about them felt ordinary. Every time the bell above the restaurant door chimed, her heart lurched, hoping, half dreading that it was him again, that it was her. And more often than not, it was. Lucas and Amaya returned 2 days later, then again that weekend, and then again after church the following Sunday. By the third visit, Amaya skipped inside like she already belonged there, pulling Simone by the hand toward the counter, as though they were old friends. "Miss Harper, do you have more cobbler today?" she asked, her eyes sparkling. Simone knelt so she could look straight into her daughter's eyes, those almond-shaped windows that mirrored her own. "For you, sweetheart." "I'll always have cobbler," she said, her voice trembling with affection she couldn't fully explain. Lucas chuckled softly. "She's been asking for it since we left last time. I think you've officially ruined every other restaurant for us." Simone forced a laugh, though her chest ached. She was careful, always careful, never to let too much spill out. She couldn't afford to. Yet Amaya seemed to sense something Simone could not contain. She hovered near the kitchen, following Simone around with chatter, offering to help set tables or fold napkins. Lucas apologized once for the intrusion, but Simone waved it off. "She's no trouble at all," she said, and she meant it. Each second in the girl's presence was a stolen miracle. But miracles had consequences. That night, after their third visit, Simone sat in her apartment staring at a napkin folded neatly on her counter. Amaya had used it at the restaurant to wipe peach filling from her chin. Simone had tucked it away like contraband, her heart pounding the whole time. Her rational mind told her she didn't need proof. The birthmark, the resemblance, the ache in her soul every time Amaya smiled, all of it was enough. But another part of her needed certainty, needed to know. With trembling hands, Simone searched the internet, finding a discreet DNA testing service. The instructions were simple. Mail in the sample. Wait, the days dragged like months. She went through the motions at the restaurant, greeting customers, managing staff, but every spare second was filled with dread and hope. When the envelope finally arrived, Simone locked herself in her bedroom before tearing it open. Her eyes scanned the page, and the words blurred through her. Tears, probability of maternity 99.99%. Her knees buckled. She sank to the floor, clutching the paper to her chest. She wept until her throat was raw, until the world around her blurred. The test had only confirmed what her heart already knew. Amaya was hers, but now the burden of secrecy was heavier than ever. How could she go on serving them peach cobbler? smiling across the counter, while this truth sat in her chest like a ticking bomb. She wanted to shout it to the world, to tell Amaya, "I'm your mother, baby. I never stopped loving you," but she couldn't, not without risking everything. Lucas was trying. She saw it in his weary eyes, in the way he straightened Amaya's ponytail absent-mindedly, in the way his shoulders slumped with the weight of sudden fatherhood. He didn't deserve to have his fragile family torn apart by the truth. One evening after closing time, she found herself sitting across from him at one of the corner booths. Amaya had fallen asleep curled on a bench, her head resting against Lucas's side as he rubbed her back gently. The sight made Simone's throat tighten. "She really loves it here," Lucas said quietly, breaking the silence. "She keeps saying she wants to come back, not just for the food, but for you." Simone's chest burned with unshed tears. She's an amazing little girl." Lucas nodded, his gaze drifting down to Amaya's sleeping face. "I'll be honest with you, Simone. I'm scared out of my mind most days. I never planned on this. I had my career mapped out, endless travel, long hours, no roots. Then suddenly, I'm raising an 8-year-old who's lost everything familiar to her." His voice broke slightly, and he quickly cleared his throat. "I love her more than I ever thought possible. But I don't always know if I'm enough." Simone's breath hitched. She reached across the table before she realized what she was doing, her hand brushing his. "Lucas, you're more than enough. She's lucky to have you." His eyes lifted to hers, vulnerable in a way that made her heart stumble. For a moment, the restaurant felt too small, too intimate, as if the world had shrunk to the space between them. "I don't usually talk about this stuff," Lucas admitted, his voice low. "But with you, it feels different. Like I don't have to pretend." Simone's chest constricted. She wanted to tell him everything, to unburden her secret, to let him understand why she felt that connection. But the fear silenced her. If she told him, would he think she was trying to take Amaya away? Would he hate her for keeping it hidden all this time? The air between them grew charged, heavy with something unspoken. Lucas's gaze lingered on her lips, and Simone felt her pulse quicken. Slowly he leaned forward, his hand still brushing hers. Her body ached to close the distance. It had been so long since she had felt wanted, seen. But as his lips hovered inches from hers, the weight of her secret came crashing back. She pulled away abruptly, standing so quickly that the chair screeched against the floor. "Like I should lock up," she stammered, avoiding his eyes. "It's late." Lucas froze, then leaned back slowly, a flicker of hurt in his expression. He nodded once, adjusting Amaya against his side. "Of course, sorry if I crossed a line." Simone forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "No, it's fine, really. Good night, Lucas." He gathered Amaya gently and carried her toward the door. Simone watched them leave, her chest hollow. When the bell jingled shut, she pressed her palms against the counter, her body trembling. Her heart wanted him. Her soul longed for her daughter, but her secret stood between them like a wall she couldn't climb. That night sleep eluded her. She lay awake, replaying every word, every look, every almost kiss. And through it all, the DNA test lay on her nightstand, a constant reminder of the truth she carried alone, a truth that, if spoken, could either set her free or destroy everything. The days that followed were both the sweetest and the most torturous of Simone's life. What had begun as occasional visits turned into something more. Lucas and Amaya weren't just customers anymore. They had become part of her daily rhythm, threads woven into the fabric of her world. On weekday evenings, Lucas would bring Amaya by after school. She'd burst through the door, her backpack slung carelessly off her shoulder, and head straight to the counter with a grin. "Miss Harper, guess what I learned today?" she'd exclaim, launching into stories of science projects and spelling tests. Simone soaked up every word, every giggle, every hug that Amaya gave freely. Each one was a gift she had thought she would never receive again. Yet with every joy came the stab of bittersweet pain. Amaya didn't know the truth. She called Lucas Dad with such certainty, such trust, that Simone's heart broke a little more each time, and yet the bond between them all only grew. One Saturday evening, Lucas stayed behind after closing to help Simone stack chairs and wipe tables. Amaya had fallen asleep in a booth with her arms sprawled over a pile of crayons. The soft golden light from the overhead fixtures painted Lucas in a warmth that made Simone's chest ache. "You know," Lucas said, drying a glass behind the counter. "I don't think I've seen Amaya this happy in a long time. She's been through so much, but here," he paused, his eyes softening as they met hers, "here with you. It's like she remembers how to just be a kid again." Simone swallowed hard, setting down the rag she held. "She's special. You're doing an amazing job with her, Lucas. Don't ever doubt that." He chuckled, though there was vulnerability beneath it. "You say that, but I lie awake at night wondering if I'm messing it all up. I was never supposed to be a parent. I didn't plan for this life." His voice softened, but then maybe life knows better than we do. The way he looked at her in that moment made her breath catch. Something unspoken flickered between them. Desire, trust, maybe even the first stirrings of love. "Simone?" His voice was low, almost a whisper. "I don't usually let people in. But with you, I feel like I can. I feel like maybe—" She froze, her heart pounding. He was saying the words she longed to hear. Words she had dreamed of since the night she saw him holding Amaya. But her secret loomed like a shadow over every syllable. Lucas stepped closer, closing the distance, his gaze falling to her lips. Simone's pulse raced, her body leaning toward him instinctively. For just a moment, she let herself imagine it, what it would feel like to give in, to taste a kiss that had been building for weeks. But then, as if on cue, Amaya stirred in the booth, murmuring in her sleep. Simone jerked back, her face flushed with both longing and fear. Lucas drew in a breath, then let it out slowly, his jaw tightening as though he knew she was pulling away. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I didn't mean to." "No," Simone interrupted quickly, shaking her head. "You didn't do anything wrong. It's just complicated." He studied her for a moment, as though searching for answers she couldn't give. Then he simply nodded, turning to gather Amaya in his arms. The night ended quietly, but the silence between them lingered heavy with everything unsaid. A week later, the world shifted again. It was a Tuesday evening when Amaya's laughter suddenly faltered. She pushed her plate away at the restaurant, her cheeks pale. Simone hurried over, crouching beside her. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" she asked gently. "My tummy hurts," Amaya whispered, her voice weak. Lucas was instantly at her side, worry etched into every line of his face. "Okay, baby girl, let's get you checked out." The ride to the hospital was a blur. Simone insisted on going with them, unable to bear the thought of being left behind. She sat in the waiting room beside Lucas, her fingers clenched tightly together, every nerve on edge. When the nurse finally called them back, Simone watched as Lucas carried Amaya in his arms, whispering reassurances into her ear. The tenderness in his voice, the protective strength in his hold, it stole Simone's breath. He wasn't just filling a role. He was a father in every sense of the word. Hours passed. Tests were run. Finally, a doctor assured them it was nothing serious, just a stubborn stomach virus. Relief washed over Lucas's face as he held Amaya's hand, brushing her hair back gently. Simone stood in the doorway of the hospital room, her chest aching with a mix of gratitude and grief. This was her daughter lying in that bed, but it was Lucas who was her anchor, her safe place. He was the one Amaya clung to when she felt sick, the one she trusted to keep her safe. Simone moved closer, brushing her fingers lightly over Amaya's forehead. The girl's eyes fluttered open, and she smiled faintly. "Miss Harper, you stayed." Tears pricked Simone's eyes. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll always stay." Lucas glanced at her then, his expression filled with something she couldn't quite name. Gratitude, maybe? Or something deeper. As Amaya drifted back to sleep, Simone's heart twisted painfully. The truth burned on her tongue, desperate to be spoken. She wanted to tell him everything, right there in that sterile hospital room. She wanted to say, "Lucas, she's mine. She's my baby girl. I never stopped loving her." She opened her mouth, her chest heaving with the words, but then Lucas looked up at her with such trust in his eyes that it silenced her. His gratitude was clear, his reliance on her undeniable, and she knew that if she spoke the truth, that look would vanish forever. Her throat closed. Tears slid silently down her cheeks as she turned away, gripping the rail of the hospital bed to steady herself. She couldn't say it. Not now. Maybe not ever, because the cost of the truth was too high. And as she stood in that hospital room, watching Lucas cradle Amaya with unwavering devotion, Simone realized something terrifying. She was already in love with him, And if her secret ever came to light, it wouldn't just break her, it would break them all. For weeks, Simone lived in a fragile dream, the kind where every smile carried both sweetness and dread. Lucas and Amaya had become constants in her days, and the more she let herself bask in their light, the more she feared the shadow of her secret. The DNA test lay buried at the bottom of her dresser drawer, but it might as well have been stitched into her skin. Every laugh, every glance from Amaya reminded her of what she couldn't say. And every moment with Lucas pulled her deeper into a love that terrified her. It was a Wednesday evening when everything unraveled. The restaurant had closed early. Amaya had begged to stay behind while Lucas finished a work call, so Simone agreed, letting the little girl help wipe down the tables. At one point, Amaya leaned close, whispering with a giggle, "Miss Harper, sometimes I feel like you're already part of us. Like you've been with me forever." Simone froze, her heart swelling and breaking at once. She knelt down, brushing a curl from Amaya's face, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, if you only knew how much Amaya." Lucas's voice cut through the room. He had come back quietly, his phone call finished, and now stood just inside the doorway, his expression unreadable. Simone straightened too quickly, guilt flashing across her face. Lucas's gaze swept from her to Amaya and back again, sharp and questioning. "What did you mean by that?" he asked, his tone controlled but tight. Simone's pulse hammered in her ears, words clawed at her throat. She had lived in fear of this moment, but now it was here, unrelenting, demanding truth. "Lucas," her voice cracked. "There's something I need to tell you." He folded his arms, his jaw taut. "I think you'd better." Simone's knees weakened. She glanced at Amaya, who had wandered toward the jukebox, distracted by the buttons, and lowered her voice. 8 years ago, I had a daughter. I wasn't in a place where I could take care of her, so I placed her for adoption." Her eyes burned as tears spilled freely now. "The couple who took her, they were your sister and brother-in-law." The silence that followed was deafening. Lucas's face drained of color. "What?" His voice was sharp, incredulous. "She's mine, Lucas." Simone's chest heaved. "Amaya is my daughter. I knew the moment I saw her, the birthmark, her eyes. I had a DNA test done. She's mine." Lucas staggered back as though she had struck him. His hands flexed at his sides, his eyes wide with disbelief and anger. "You've known all this time, and you didn't say anything." Simone reached out desperately. "I didn't want to hurt her or you. She's happy with you. She calls you Dad. I didn't want to take that away." "You've been lying to me," he snapped, his voice rising. "All those nights we talked, all those moments. And you kept this from me. Do you have any idea how that feels?" Her tears blurred everything. "I was afraid. Afraid you'd think I was trying to steal her from you. Afraid she'd be confused. Afraid it would all fall apart." Lucas shook his head, stepping back further. "You should have trusted me, Simone. You should have trusted us. Instead, you've been living in my daughter's life under false pretenses." His voice cracked on the word daughter. Simone flinched as if the word was a blade. "She's mine too," she whispered hoarsely. The room seemed to fracture around them. Amaya turned then, sensing the tension, her small brow furrowed. "Daddy, Miss Harper, what's wrong?" Lucas forced a steady breath, crouching to her level. "Nothing, sweetheart. We're going home." He didn't look back at Simone as he took Amaya's hand and walked out. The bell above the door jingled, its cheerful sound mocking the silence that followed. Simone stood frozen in the middle of the restaurant, her chest hollow, her body trembling. The door closed. And with it, her world. The next days were unbearable. Lucas didn't bring Amaya by. He didn't answer Simone's texts or calls. The restaurant felt like a ghost town, even when it was full of people. Every plate she set down, every smile she forced, only reminded her of the gaping absence. At night she lay awake, clutching the DNA results, her sobs muffled into her pillow. She had lost them again. But this time it was worse because she had tasted what life could have been. By the 4th day, Simone was a shadow of herself. She considered shutting the restaurant just to escape the weight of pretending. But then one evening, as she swept the floor near closing, a small knock sounded at the door. Amaya. She stood there clutching her stuffed rabbit, her eyes wide and uncertain. Behind her, Lucas lingered, his expression tense but softer than before. Simone's breath hitched as she opened the door. "Sweetheart," she whispered, her voice breaking. Amaya stepped inside, looking up at her with a seriousness far beyond her years. Miss Harper, why did Daddy say you can't come see us anymore? Did I do something wrong? Simone dropped to her knees, pulling the little girl into her arms. No, baby, you did nothing wrong. You're perfect. Tears wet her cheeks as she held her daughter close, the one she had lost and found again. Amaya pulled back, tilting her head. I feel like you're supposed to be with me. Like we're connected. She glanced back at Lucas. Daddy, I don't want to stop seeing her. Lucas's throat worked as he swallowed hard, his gaze torn between them. For the first time since the confrontation, Simone saw the conflict in his eyes. Not just anger, but something else. Something wounded and searching. She's a kid, Lucas said finally, his voice low. But she's not wrong. She feels something, I see it. His eyes met Simone's then, raw and vulnerable. You should have told me from the beginning. I don't know if I can forgive the way you kept it from me. But, he exhaled shakily, I can't deny that you love her, that you've always loved her. Simone's tears fell freely now. I never stopped, Lucas, not for a second. But I swear I wasn't trying to take her away. I wanted to be near her. And then you, her voice cracked. You made me believe maybe I could have both. Love her and love you. The words hung between them, fragile and trembling. Lucas studied her for a long moment, then looked down at Amaya, who was gripping both their hands now, her small smile bridging the broken pieces between them. Finally he nodded, his shoulders sagging as though letting go of a burden. Then maybe we try again, together. No more secrets. Simone choked on a sob of relief. You mean it? Lucas stepped closer, reaching for her hand. I mean it. I don't want to raise her without you. And I don't want to live without you either. Amaya beamed, wrapping her arms around them both. So we can be a family, she asked, her voice full of hope. Yes, baby, Lucas said softly, kissing the top of her head. His eyes met Simone's as he added, a family. Simone clung to them both, her tears falling freely. But this time they were tears of healing, of joy, of finally coming home. And in that moment, three hearts bound together by truth and forgiveness, Simone knew the fear was over. Love had won. One evening, as they walked out the door together, the golden light catching their faces, Simone felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The fear, the secrecy, the endless nights of wondering and longing, they were all behind her now. She had her daughter back, and she had the love she had thought she'd never find. Amaya skipped ahead, her laughter echoing in the warm air, and Lucas and Simone followed hand in hand. In that simple act, walking side by side, hearts beating in sync, they were more than just mother, father, and child. They were a family reborn, forged not by perfection, but by forgiveness, truth, and the unbreakable bonds of love. To my beautiful family here on this channel, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Every story I share, every word I write, becomes alive because of you. You are not just my viewers, you are my family, the ones who laugh, cry, and dream with me through each chapter. Your love, your support, and your presence mean more to me than I can ever express. We are building something special together, a community bound not just by stories but by heart. Thank you for being here, for believing in me, and for making this journey so much brighter. I love you all dearly. Vintage Mike Tales.